Hello? You are the chosen one. Are you ready, Marinette?
Gardening is a belief in the future. A belief that things will happen according to plan. Who did this to you?
I have decided to build a magnificent palace, and it's you, edifice, I have chosen as my architect.
Wait a minute, me, your greatness, did I hear you right?
You have 3 months.
Hello and welcome to our weekly film show with me and France 24's film critic Lisa Nesselson, and we're starting with a French phenomenon which has become an international sensation. After 5 series, Miraculous, one of the world's most watched animated series, broadcast in 150 countries, has been made into a movie. Our guest today is Jeremy Zagg, who not only directed Ladybug and Cat Noir, he wrote, produced and composed the music for it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, congratulations on the success of this series and this idea. When the film premiered in Paris, the young audience went totally crazy for it. This all started back in 2015 with the TV series. You wanted to make a French Marvel with a superheroine set in Paris. Why?
Because I grew up in France, where I used to read a lot of manga from anime from Japan, and I love the superhero coming from America. But most of the time when you read manga from Japan, they have a lot of girl powers, but most of the time they are a little too sexy. Mm-hmm. So when you go to the American superhero version, they are very man's driven, very full of muscle, very strong, coming from the military or whatever. But there is nothing in between these two worlds. And I really wanted to create a superhero girl, a shiro, I call it a shiro, and very iconic. But this time she has a power coming from her heart, the courage. But when she transforms, like the Japanese manga, you know, with the music and all of those type of rendezvous, she looked like an American superhero, and she's in Paris.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the film.
What if I fail? You must face your own fear to protect the people you love. The fate of the world is in your hands! Ah! I forgot how loud this part could be. You are not the only one, Marinette. There is another.
Bonjour.
Well, Lisa, you've seen it. Both of my children watched it last night in preview, so they're very excited. And what did you make of the film? Tell us about it.
Well, Marionnette and Adrien are high school students in Paris, and thanks to ancient gemstones, the Miraculous of the title, Marionnette can become the masked superhero known as Ladybug, and Adrien can turn into the masked superhero Cat Noir. It's their job to save the world, as you saw there, whenever they get a signal that the world needs saving, usually because somebody got really angry and another magic stone magnified their anger to terrifying dimensions. So Ladybug and Cat Noir gradually begin to fall in love, but neither character suspects, not even a little bit, who is really hidden behind the mask. Will they ever figure out the secret identities that we, as viewers, even if we're 5 years old, already know? And will they figure it out before the world, or at least Paris, is destroyed?
And do you think, and we see these beautiful images of Paris all the way through the series, all the way through the film, do you think the beauty of Paris has played a part in the success?
Yes, I'm a big lover of Paris, and I grew up. I grew up in Paris, and I spent the last 10 years in America. And when I look at Paris from there, I really think that Paris is a part of the magical miracle of Miraculous. There is a love story, 2 very iconic heroes, and of course there is Paris. Because Paris, there is mystery, there is love, there is action, there is everything you want to play with. It's full of soul, you know?
Okay, and one thing that's very different in the film is the music, the songs, the characters sing. Why did you want to do that?
Because the same way I love the anime meets the superhero, I used to watch every Christmas or every summer a Disney movie. Mm-hmm. And I thought that having superheroes singing with a love story at the center would have been never seen before. And we've made the try. I've composed the songs. I made it listen to the team, and everybody fell in love with it, including our partners. And we decided to just
Go with
the
it.
journey. Voilà.
As you said, young people just love these characters, but isn't trying to keep the world in balance and saving it from evil too big a job for teenagers? So does it take a girl and a boy to equal one Spider-Man or one Superman?
This is why there is a very important message in the middle of the movie, which is stronger together. They have to be stronger together, and they have to face their fear for love, which means that Marinette is afraid of everything, but when she has to protect the people she loves, suddenly she forgets all her fears and she just go for it.
And Jeremy, more than a cartoon, Miraculous has become a social phenomenon. There are costumes, dolls, stuffed animals, video games, a musical, and even a cruise on the River Seine. This is actually the start of a trilogy, so there'll be 2 other films. What about a live-action movie?
We are in development in a live-action content. Right now it's a series, but we take the time to make it right because we don't want to jeopardize the franchise, and we want to be sure that if we make it right, because we've seen what happened with a lot of adaptations lastly, and I'm a big lover of a lot of movies that I grew up with, and when I look at it in adaptation, I was not very happy with it, and I just don't want to do it, because even if the biggest one didn't make it the right way, we have to be very careful and protect the brand. Adapt the trend to our brand and not the brand to the trend.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Well, we're going to move on to another new release in France this week. Master Gardener, written and directed by Paul Schrader. It stars Joel Edgerton as the live-in gardener on the estate of a woman played by Sigourney Weaver. Tell us more.
Well, Edgerton plays Narval, a fair-minded, stern, and hard-working horticulture specialist, and when his employer, Mrs. Haverhill, announces that her orphaned great-niece, Maya, will be coming to the estate to keep out of trouble, things get really interesting. Now, you'd assume that a guy who makes flowers grow in beautiful patterns is a pussycat, right? Maybe not. Norval seems to have scary dreams and a parole officer. Narval may have a green thumb, but it's possible he has a black past.
Okay, well, let's take a look at Master Gardener.
I have a favor to ask.
What is it?
My grandniece. I would like you to take her on as an apprentice. She dropped out of school, and then she ended up in a bad crowd.
You'll learn how to garden. Are you satisfied with the life that you have?
How would you ask that? You know, you talk a lot of shit, but there's one thing you don't talk about.
What's that?
Yourself.
Well, there's not much to know.
Well, it's directed by Paul Schrader, and he comes from an unusual background, doesn't he?
He certainly does. He was raised in a strict Calvinist household that was not centered on pleasure or casual fun or Disney movies. He broke through with the screenplay for Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, and he didn't see a movie until he was 17 years old. Now he's about to turn 77, and given the power of his recent films, First Reformed and The Card Counter, and now this, personally, I want Paul Schrader to keep making movies for as long as he cares to make them. He's a very American filmmaker, but deeply influenced by European and Asian cinema. You may have heard of American Gigolo, starring Richard Gere wearing a whole lot of Giorgio Armani when he's not naked. Well, that was more or less a remake of Frenchman Robert Bresson's austere 1959 film Pickpocket, but he made it completely American. Schrader makes parables about salvation that are superb character studies. See this.
Well, that's Master Gardener. Well, next to the 20th anniversary re-release of a fabulously successful French movie in which beloved comic book characters were brought to life with an all-star cast. Why is Asterix and Obelix Mission Cleopatra worth revisiting 2 decades later?
Well, because there's a childish irreverence at work here that French entertainers can be very, very good at. And because it's a costume picture with Monica Bellucci as Cleopatra, it can be silly and still seem timeless. These characters are known all over the world thanks to the clever comics that mock history via the adventures of the two title characters. These are such popular pop culture books that many expressions that originated in them have actually entered the French language, and all French speakers understand them. The first published episode of Asterix's Adventures dates to October 1959, and by 1965, the character was so famous that the first French satellite was named Asterix.
Wow, it's quite something. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for telling us about that. We're going to leave you with a glimpse of some of France's best comic talents. Thank you to today's guest, Jeremy Zagg, whose film
Thank you so much
Ladybug and Cat Noir is in French cinemas now. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
I'm Asterix, and this is Obelix.
And this little guy's Dogmatics.
Quiet, all of you!
Hold there. Surrender or die.
You're new here.
I knew that I would not.
No, Obelix, you fell in.
Yeah, when I was a baby, I know. One little mistake.
On France 24, watch exclusive interviews with the world's most influential personalities.
We need to act together because we're protecting our freedom.
Encounters with key political leaders.
L'inquiétude, elle est extrême.
Leading figures from the worlds of culture, sport and science.
La science, la recherche, la découverte, le progrès, c'est important, c'est pas des mots qui sont vides.
Whatever you think is right, you can do.
Watch The Interview, a meeting of ideas on France 24 and France24.com.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.